Welcome to the High We Like podcast show, the show where we talk about movies, TV shows, video games, all sorts of cool shit and also nerd shit. It's good, watch it. Hello and welcome to the inaugural episode of High We Like podcast. I assume that's what we're gonna call it. I kind of just called Michael up and was just like, "Hey, you want to do a podcast?" And he's like, "Sure." I didn't plan ahead at all, really.
That is the exact story.
I don't even know what I'm going to do. I want to do like an intro. Like all these friggin' podcasts have like an intro jingle. I don't know what the hell I'm going to do for that.
We'll take your favorite song at the moment, which I'm not exactly sure, and we'll put it into one of those like create a MIDI files where it just makes it into MIDI piano notes, and that'll be the jingle.
My favorite song right now is the Dark Trooper dubstep theme, which we will talk about in this episode probably. But for those of you who don't know, my name's Aiden. I run the channel I Like Movies, aspiring YouTuber, aspiring filmmaker. I'm just in the aspiring phases at the moment. I'm here with my pal Michael. If you follow us on Patreon, you might recognize Michael from our past commentaries that we've been doing. He's popped out in most, I think almost all of them actually.
I've been in the background of the James Bond commentaries and reviews, and I have known Aiden since grade school at this point. Yeah. And he's been working on all of his movie stuff for the past, I'd say, decade at this point. So with over 1 decade of special effects experience.
I think the thing you're fiddling with might be picking up on the mic, so you might not want to fiddle with the fiddler.
I'm
sorry.
Fiddling with the diddler. Back to the matter at hand, Aiden, this is a very exciting week for not just like pop culture in general, but specifically Star Wars and everything Disney after the investors. Yeah, they had
meeting. The big it's been today's going to be I think the podcast in general in the future is going to be like movies, show, basically all just media stuff, video games, all that jazz. But today specifically, just because it's been such a massive couple of days for Star Wars, we're going to do exclusively Star Wars stuff, right? I think we're going to start off by talking about, kind of give a review of Mandalorian Season 2, since that is now just finished. And we'll also talk about all the absolute avalanche of Star Wars information that came out shortly before it ended. So
I just want to say that season finale... Like
we'll get to that.
I want to preface it with like it ended on a high note. If you still haven't watched it all the way through, make sure you do that. We're going to be covering every episode up until that point, and then talk about the Star Wars stuff that is going to be released this in the next coming years. Everything that has been announced, at least. Mm-hmm. But for this last episode, which I will not talk about as of yet, oh my gosh. So good. They ended it on the best note they probably could have. And I think we should just go from the beginning of the season and just go through.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. But like before we get into that, what were your general thoughts of the first season? Because there's a lot of hype, but also kind of apprehension to it, just because the fan base was very divided at that point with the Disney films that had come out. Some people love them, some people hate them, and some people are just like whatever. But it's a very heated topic on the internet, so a lot of people are very curious as what the first live-action Star Wars show is going to be. What were your general thoughts on the very first season?
Well, that's a really good question, because my general thoughts were absolutely nothing, because I didn't watch it when it came out.
It didn't?
It had taken the internet by storm, and I still hadn't bought into the whole Disney Plus thing. And it comes out that I think it's in the second episode that we meet the Baby Yoda character.
Well, we meet him at the end of the first episode.
We meet him at the end of the first
That's like the big like hook.
So I'm browsing through the internet. I guess I'm on like Instagram or Facebook or something. I'm seeing all the it's Baby Yoda. And being the connoisseur, I'm pushing up my glasses right now. Being the aficionado of Star Wars, I know it can't be Baby Yoda because Yoda's already dead.
It takes place after Return of the Jedi, and Yoda died in Return of the Jedi. So mathematically speaking, that
I'm right and you're wrong. I'm Star Wars. What I had come to find was that the whole internet had fallen in love with this character, and I'm like, I don't even think. The thing that was going through my head was I don't think they know who he is, but then I'm thinking I don't even know who it is.
I was just surprised that they were able to keep him a secret the entire time.
Throughout all
because
the
it's
production.
not like he's, obviously, as people probably know now, it's not like he was just like a one-off type of character. Like he is, it's the Baby Yoda show, essentially.
Not only is it the Baby Yoda show, but everybody involved had to have seen him throughout all of production. So that's Pedro Pascal, that's some of the directors such as Waititi,
Werner Herzog,
Bryce Dallas Howard. Obviously, the people in charge like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau wouldn't have said anything.
I think Werner Herzog was actually the one who pushed for Baby Yoda to be a puppet and not like CGI, because they were floating with that idea, and then Werner Herzog's like, "Do it, you cowards!"
Everybody, do yourself a favor and look up the interviews pertaining to Werner Herzog talking about the baby. And
we can do an entire episode of Werner Herzog in the future, because there's so much to talk about. What a fascinating fucking person. I was so bummed when he didn't survive the first season, because he just like
he was such
and he took that role and he had zero prior knowledge of Star Wars. He just picked it because he thought it was a cool role.
No prior knowledge, and it like these, as Aiden once told me, he's one of the few like high-end directors in Hollywood and Hollywood actors too who's not just a total like prick.
It's someone who's like clearly a master of his craft, but is also not a pretentious douchebag, is the best way to put it.
I'm thinking of the two interviews I can remember. The one is where he's talking about the baby, and I was holding the baby. Then the second one is, if you didn't know, The Mandalorian is shot using really cool set technology, which is that they have built a 360-degree like TV screen, 8K monitors wrapped around an entire set, meaning that you can shoot at like any time of day, any place you want to. Say you want to shoot like a scene at night, you want to shoot a scene at midday, you want to shoot a scene inside a cantina. It literally projects the where you want to be around you through like Unreal Engine technology, which is like a video game thing.
And it seems that that's becoming industry standard,
especially for all the Disney shows who are using it right now.
Yeah, it's because it's becoming industry standard, because I think they're using that same technology for Thor 4, which makes sense because Taika Waititi also worked on that last season as well.
And this is based off of all of the VR stuff that Jon Favreau used in The Lion King 2019. Do not watch that movie.
I don't like talking about that movie.
I'm only on one episode and I'm gonna get kicked off the podcast.
No, you're already banned. We don't talk about that film.
No, but what's his name? Werner Herzog is going crazy over the tech that he like sits down and it's like they're in space, and then he sits down at the bar table and suddenly the canteen is projected around him, and then he said, "I was looking at the space when suddenly it switched and I was inside of the cantina, and there were people moving around and drinking it."
I think the scene that kind of encapsulates Werner Herzog as a person is that cameo he has in Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
He's like, "I want to sell the house so I can move to Florida and be closer to Walt Disney World."
I think we all need to be closer to Walt Disney World right now. But going back to, you had asked me, like, what were my prevailing opinions?
Yeah, sounds positive. You enjoyed it overall.
I got to see it over at a friend's house, and the first episode has a very, has a bunch of subtle nods to really, really old, really obscure Star Wars stuff, and I really enjoyed it. For example, that first episode is they're cashing in on the first appearance of the Boba Fett character in the Christmas special.
Yeah, they mentioned Life Day in the Christmas special.
I also will get kicked off the podcast for mentioning the Christmas. I'm having a good run today, boys and girls.
Yeah, we won't go too into detail of the first season, but overall I really liked it a lot. I'd say there were a couple, it did kind of slow, it was a little slow at certain points. There were a couple episodes that did feel a little bit on the fillery side. But it made sense because this is very much like a setup season, setting up the characters, setting up the world, and the second season is more diving deep into the kind of mythology of the show, and also just a truckload of references to other Star Wars properties and aspects as well.
I think the good thing about Mandalorian, or one of the good things about Mandalorian, is that I can't pick out an episode and say this was bad, this was handled poorly. I don't think that
nothing's unbelievably awful,
which is weird considering the modern run of Disney's ownership of Star Wars, where people are really divided over a bunch of aspects of these.
Here it feels much more unanimous that people like it.
And I find that really strange because one of the biggest complaints about the Star Wars movies as of recent is, they handed it off from director to there's no one person in charge. And I'm like, well, that's how this show works. Like, they have the head writers on there, but each episode is handed off to a different director. It's handed off to different screenwriters. It's bounced back and forth, but there's still one singular vision for it, which is something that I think the movies, whereas the show is filmed continuously over the course of like a year or so, the movies have been it's been since 2015. That 7 came out, 2017 that 8 came out, and 2019 that 9 came out.
Yeah, and then there's also the prequel films in the in-between year, or not the prequel, the spin-off films in those in-between years, which also had a very notoriously difficult production process.
Just completely that Solo movie got completely reshot. The
Solo seemed like it was a disastrous production at the start. I actually think they did a pretty good job salvaging it. I mean, like if I watched that movie and be like, I didn't know this had so many issues, but it did because of the kind of director troubles they had with Lord Miller. But yeah, I overall enjoyed the new movies, but it is so painfully obvious that there was not a long-term plan, and if they did have a long-term plan, they did not stick to it.
And that's the difference between the movies and I'm hoping this new roster of shows coming out where I think they've learned their lesson, and the Mandalorian in and of itself is a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
People
I think it's far more popular than the movies.
And even if like you check Twitter one day and there's like someone saying, I don't like this character, that's not like a complete turnoff of the show, which is how the movies usually go.
Yeah, usually the movies are like, this one character sucks and therefore the entire movie is awful.
The entire production is burn it, tear it to the ground, make new movies covering up this one. No, it's that even if you don't like an individual episode or an individual character, people still unanimously love that. And I can say I've been to the reopened Downtown Disney before it got reclosed, or kind of
reopened and closed again.
The first things to sell when that thing opens in the morning are everything that has to do with the Baby Yoda character, all the Mandalorian merchandise. One of the top selling costumes of Halloween this year was the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
So this has had an impressive pop cultural impact on this generation of both like Star Wars fans and just TV fans in general. I think it's one of the big shows of the past few years.
I think I read somewhere that like it was some sort of study of like most popular franchises, and it wasn't Star Wars as the most popular. It was specifically The Mandalorian as the most popular franchise now.
To frame this with some reference, The Mandalorian is 5 times more popular than any other streamable thing on Disney Plus right now.
Well, yeah.
The number that Mandalorian is number 1. Number 2 is Hamilton. Mandalorian is 5 times more, and that's not just like one episode is better. No, that's all of the episodes.
The entire series, yeah.
5 times more popular than Hamilton, which came out like after Mandalorian came out. Mm-hmm. So, that first season introduced us to the character, to Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian.
Yeah.
It introduced us to the post-movies world that like it exists in.
Yeah. Because I like how it does like flesh out the kind of like post, like it takes place in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, of course. So it kind of shows like kind of what's been going on in between that time.
My sister was asking me if I could describe the look of Mandalorian compared to the other Star Wars movies, and I definitely say spaghetti western, what everybody else says. I definitely say western for a lot of the early episodes, but if you talk about like any of the other movies, the idea of Star Wars is that it takes place in basically the future has already happened.
Yeah,
we're in a post-future like society. We've already been to space. So now everything that goes to space is old, it's militarized, it's junky looking, but that gives it like it makes it feel a little bit more real. That's why there's rarely anything shiny and new. It's all old, industrial, militarized, especially in The Mandalorian, everything's like, even post that, we're a cowboy level of society where just people are killing each other left and right, and bounty hunters are a thing. Whereas in the later movies like 7, 8, 9, you can definitely say they're more space fantasy. There are a lot more fantastical elements to go along with them for like some of the magic that we see in like the last one.
I mean, like Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren are like crusaders, essentially. Like they're knights.
And not to say that the Mandalorian isn't designed to look like a knight, but he very much acts in all scenarios. He doesn't act like a knight.
Well, he's a samurai. Yeah. He's like a Ronin.
Exactly.
There's an episode that like I think you hit the nail right on the head. That's very Western. Like this is the most Western Star Wars thing that has been around since like the original Star Wars. Like that is very accurate. And the second season, I think it goes even more into the Western kind of mythology of Star Wars than the first season even did, and we'll get into that in just a bit. So what were your so now we got our general thoughts on the first season out of the way, what are your just general, very open, like non-spoiler, we'll go into spoilers in a second obviously, but like no spoiler thoughts on Mandalorian season 2 is what I'm trying to say.
I think it took everything from the first season, took it up a level, and knocked it out of the park. I think that...
So you liked it a lot more than the
very
first
much
season.
I think the second season is better. I think it checks off all the boxes that not only the people who like Star Wars, but just people who are enjoying the story. I think it does a lot with what it's given, despite a lot of the hurdles that it may have in production and in like the ability to grab from the source material.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it's really good. What do you think of it?
I agree. I think it's just the first season. It took everything that worked in the first season and just made it better, I think. And it didn't have. I just complained earlier that some of the episodes in the first season felt a bit fillery. And here, there's only like one episode I would call kind of fillery, but even then, like it's not a bad episode overall. It's a very, very strong season that's got a lot of Star Wars nostalgia initiated into it. It definitely feels like it's bringing this this Mandalorian character and its world into the much grander world of Star Wars, and kind of like intersecting with, which is kind of like what Rebels did when that was in its like finale phase of its first season. It kind of crosses over with like the bigger part of the Star Wars universe.
I think one of the best ways to describe it is that a lot of these shows are attempting to bridge the gaps between movies, and Mandalorian I think does it the best way, because it's not overly preachy or pandering, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's not like saying, oh, remember this happened? Well, here's the reason why. It's very much...
It feels like every character has a reason to be
Every
there.
character has a reason to be there. Everything is subtly...
It's not like those two guys from A New Hope showing up randomly in Rogue One. They're like, hey, watch where you go. It's like, what are you doing here? Get out of it. No one likes you enough for you to be here.
Just watch yourself.
Yeah, to me, it's the... Like, even though... I'll probably rant about Rogue One a lot in this video, because there's one direct comparison you can make to Rogue One in this season, like at the very last episode. But I like Rogue One overall. I still think it's a good movie, but like that to me is the bad kind of fan service for some select things. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I love the Darth Vader scene." I'm like, "Okay, it's a cool scene," but when you put it in the rest of the movie, it's completely detached from everything in that film.
Keep in mind, I am
like, it felt like they were like, oh, people heard Darth Vader's in the movie, we got and like they said it's a reshoot scene, and it totally shows. Like you can totally tell it's a reshoot.
Keep in mind, I am the Rogue One stan. I think that
I know you love it.
I love that movie, but I'm also very accepting of it has so many problems along the way.
Yeah.
I can definitely say, like, I can definitely see through the eyes of someone who doesn't like this movie specifically for those reasons. And I'm like, yes, that is 100%. These arguments are very valid.
But at the same time, it's not trying. I don't think it's trying to be like this big, like, epic space opera like the main series is trying to be. I think it knows it's like a one-off adventure type of thing. Mm-hmm. So that's fine. It does the job in that regard for sure. I think it has problems, but that is for sure like what it is. But yeah, enough about Rogue One, enough about Werner Herzog. Let's just jump into the main episodes. Episode 1 or episode. They're still continuing the sequential order from the last season, so this is episode 9 technically. The Marshal. I got really close to saying this was my favorite episode of the season, but I think there's one midway through that is a little bit better. But this is not only a phenomenal first episode, I think this episode alone, and this is a bold claim, but I think this episode is probably, like, when people are like, when did TV finally catch up to movies? I'm going to point to this episode and be like, this is when it happened.
It has, not only does this show have a lot of elements that really break from... The way I like to describe television versus movies is that a movie is trying to take a lot of really good ideas, a lot of them, and put it into a palatable time frame, which is going to be between an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe even 3 hours if you're Lord of the Rings. Whereas a TV show is trying to take one idea and spread it across an entirety of 3 or 4 seasons. It's essentially 100 episodes. With The Mandalorian, you're getting a movie in every episode.
Yeah.
You're getting that really good idea.
That cinematic quality. And it makes sense that cinematic quality is here more than the other episodes because it was directed by Jon Favreau, who, of course, is the showrunner. But this is the first episode he directed. And there's even a moment where the aspect ratio changes to like an IMAX ratio, which really kind of, I think, enhanced that cinematic quality, but at the same time, what was happening on screen justified that change.
I'm not exactly sure if they actually used IMAX cameras or not. It did look like it, though.
Yeah.
That scene really looked very Chris Nolan, especially when it opens up. But you can tell that if they hadn't done that, the scene wouldn't have been the same. Everything in Mandalorian is done for a reason. The aspect ratio opening up meant that there was going to be something really big on screen. Yeah. You had to see every detail of it and how it affects... Or can we go into spoilers now?
Yeah, we can now. I was just like kind of setting my general thoughts for the episode.
General thoughts on this episode. So good. They lots of fan service.
Should we explain like the plot of the episode first?
Yeah,
before we go further?
We'll go through.
So yeah, it takes place like I assume like right after the events of the first one. Mando is looking for other Mandalorians because most of them got wiped out when they went back to...
He needs help delivering the Baby Yoda character to the Jedi. Yeah. And he knows that the only way to do that is to find other Mandalorians who will help him along.
Yeah, and then he gets information from this Cyclops guy who's voiced by John Leguizamo.
That's right!
He was unrecognizable, and I had no idea that was John Leguizamo until I saw the credits at the end.
Speaking of unrecognizable, they do a really cool thing with the John Leguizamo's character's face in that you can't... It looks like real.
Yeah, they used an actual like prosthetic like costume thing, but they also like CGI'd his mouth. So it's a kind of a blend of both the practical and CGI effects, and it winds up looking really good.
I think it's this mix of you usually, if someone is completely CGI, like the face, like the Tarkin in Rogue One, you can tell it's...
Or any prequel character, essentially.
Yeah, you can definitely
Instead of being like
tell
purely CGI, it's a meld of both.
It's very plasticky, it's very rubbery, and the human eye has the ability to distinguish whether or not it's a real person or not. That's what we've been doing for... generations, but with this character, it's the weird combination of they actually did use a prosthetic for John Leguizamo, and they CGI'd over it, making it so confusing to the eye that you can't tell, like, is this real? How did they do this? Yeah. So he gets the information from this character in, I think there's like a wrestling match going on.
Yeah, it was like a fight club with Gamorreans. Yeah,
the best. I would pay so much money if Disney would host that at the parks, and then you like bet on it. That would be so good.
But yeah, he gets the information from him, and he tells him to go back to Tatooine. He's like, "There's a Mandalorian on Tatooine," and then of course your Star Wars brain goes, "Oh my God, he's coming!" But he gets there, and then he finds this rinky-dink kind of town, and then you see this guy who's wearing Boba Fett's armor, and you're like, "Holy shit!" But of course, it's not really Boba Fett. It's Timothy Olyphant's character, Cobb Vanth, who's kind of like the marshal of this little town, which again is a very Western thing to kind of have this one guy who's the sheriff.
Speaking of Western, there's one big thing that's terrorizing the town. It's a giant. It's a callback to the first Star Wars movie, actually.
Oh yeah.
It's if you guys remember, one of the establishing shots of the big desert planet is that there's like a giant dinosaur or whale-looking fossil up on a hill, and that's the thing that's like attacking this town.
Yeah, the Krayt Dragon, which is a thing the Krayt Dragon's been like referenced in so many Star Wars things, but you've never actually seen it, at least in live action, before. So it was like really cool to see such a heavily referenced thing kind of finally be able to see that in live action.
So they, the Mandalorian character and the Cobb Vanth character, they team up, they go try to track it down, they see how they can do it. And
which again is another very Western thing to kind of like hunt down this creature that's terrorizing
it's the Lone Ranger kind of character meeting up with the sheriff of a small town.
I mean, the joke we made is that the Krayt Dragon's just an Alaskan bullworm.
Exactly! Then...
Why don't we just take Tatooine and push it somewhere else?
One of the next big, very Western elements of this specific episode is that once we've had a couple instances where mainly the antagonistic characters of the desert planet, the Sand People, are reintroduced, and the Mandalorian is still very he's still really cordial with them. He still negotiates,
which is a big thing because in every other Star Wars thing, they're just kind of like these mindless brutes, and here they actually give them character, and they're like, this is their fucking planet, they lived here.
I think the history is that you're right, they have been here the longest, and they see everybody else as settlers, or which really ties into the rest of the episode, which is that the the people in this small town have to team up with the Sand People,
like Blazing Saddles.
So it turns into the Cowboys and Indians trope, where then they take it to the Krayt Dragon in an amazing, fantastic third act of one episode.
When it switches, I think like we mentioned earlier, when it switches into IMAX, the sheer scale of the dragon and everything, it's just that's a scale that I rarely see in movies, let alone TV shows. They did such a good job shooting it to make it look like this big, massive thing.
One of the biggest problems when you got something like a Godzilla movie is that what they try to do is, with the new ones at least, you have the giant Godzilla character, but then you have to try to compare that to a person. And Godzilla's sheer size is so large that even when a person is seeing it or standing next to it, there is no comparison, there's no frame of reference, there's nothing you can look at that'll say these characters somehow can relate to each other. And it's so hard for the human brain to even think about the sheer size of what they're making this character. The really cool thing about this episode, though, is like what Aiden said, goes big screen. You see every character, every animal, everything on set compared to this giant creature, but you still have the perfect frame of reference for, okay, this is how this is how they're going to try to fight it. This is how they're going to be next to it. They can't obviously take it on head on, so they got to be smart with it. And I think they did a really good job framing this in this episode.
Yeah, and then of course, the first episode, he's not going to die. So they beat it. They get this is one of the first of many references to Knights of the Old Republic, which, as Michael knows, is my favorite Star Wars thing. When in Knights of the Old Republic, you fight a Krayt Dragon and you do it to get a pearl. And here, the Tusken Raider picks up a pearl. He goes that's
a really cool thing.
Oh, they reference the game.
There's someone on that writing team who not only knows Star Wars, because I know Star Wars, my sister knows Star Wars. There are people who know the really obscure tidbits that will really make, not only are essential to good storytelling, but that makes the fans who actually know what they're talking about rejoice because of how cool it is. One of the biggest things I always say about Star Wars is that I'm a sucker for good storytelling. The storytelling is either top notch, the best of this generation, or it is the absolute bottom of the
Dave
barrel
Filoni
of
is perfect for Star Wars because he matches Star Wars level of consistency.
Which is that there's no
the epitome of that is the final season of Clone Wars. Clone Wars, it's if you look at the 3 arcs, which are those 3-4 episode parts of the show, the first part is middle of the road, perfectly fine. The second arc is ungodly amounts of horrible and awful and terrible and bad. But then you get to the last part and it's the perfect ending to that show.
There's no way that show could have ended on a better note.
Yeah, it did everything perfectly. And I'm just you could just skip the other 8 episodes and just go straight to this.
Which matches with the consistency of Clone Wars, where half of it is
even like
so
the
good.
prequels. Like you could skip 1 and 2 and just go straight to 3 if you really wanted to.
Which then brings us to the overarching of Star Wars, where half of the movies are not good, and the other half are god tier levels of great.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing with Star Wars. It either has to be like perfect great, or it has to be like ass garbage. You're not allowed to have like just an okay or meh movie. Like it has to be one of those extremes.
They have to go all out in one certain direction. Everybody has to either love it or hate it. Going on to the next episode.
Oh, but you didn't mention the end of this episode.
Oh shit, I didn't. I was saving it, but go ahead.
When you see him, you see the guy.
So the end of the episode is you see this kind of robed guy. He's carrying the staff.
And they're trying to make it like, oh, who is this? And everyone's like, that's fucking Boba Fett. Like, who else could that fucking be?
He takes off his hood, and it's Tamora Morrison, the guy who played him, or his dad, the Jango Fett.
Well, he played Jango Fett, but Boba's technically a clone of Jango.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't age as fast as the other clones do.
And there's the fact that he survived, and the fact that he also he's reprising his role in the series is just was astonishing at the beginning of the season. We haven't even gotten to what's actually coming up.
Yeah, and at first we were so worried, like, oh my god, is that it? Is that the last we're gonna see?
Oh, we're never gonna. It was just a call out. It was just a cameo.
Just a fun little reference. See him in his own show.
This was Stan Lee. It means absolutely nothing to the rest of the plot. And then, oh my gosh.
But God, it was just a really cool way to end that show, because the entire thing, you're trying to figure out, like, how did he get his armor? How did Boba Fett get out? Get out, get this? And they're like, okay, he got out.
And a huge point of this episode is they give the sheriff a really good motivate. It's not usually in like a Western movie. The sheriff is like, oh, I got my not my powers, but I became myself when I got my gun. Yeah, and that's where it all came. In this episode, they keep with the Mandalorian mythology, and it's like I became who I am with the suit that I bought off of the Jawas, the native like droid and part traders. Mm-hmm. So he gets the Mandalorian armor and becomes the sheriff, which is a really cool, very Western-y thing that they did in this episode.
Yeah. But that was a perfect way to end this episode. The next episode, I think, is the weakest. I don't think it's not bad. It's still like a 7 out of 10 episode, but this was the only episode that didn't like really grab me.
You gotta give me the name, man.
It's the passenger one with the frog lady.
That's number 2.
Yeah, it's the second one.
Okay, yeah, no,
because remember he was on Tatooine, and then he said like, oh, she'll take you to him.
I know why you don't like this episode, but I'm gonna let you explain it.
It was just like, it's not a bad episode. It's just compared to all the other episodes, which are all like 9, 10 out of 10 episodes. This one was just a lot slower, and it didn't feel like everything was kind of coming together, I guess, because the majority of it is just them like stuck on this ice planet. Then eventually they get out, and then it's kind of just... there's really not much to talk about, because that's really all there is to it.
The point of this episode is that the Mandalorian has to... he gets good advice as to where he needs to go in order to find more Mandalorians, but in order to get that... Is it like that he's going to get paid? Is it that he needs her to help find it? She says her husband knows where to find Mandalorians. So he has to go at not light speed, which would have made this episode a lot...
That's another thing, is that he can't go light speed, because the thing is she's transporting her eggs, and the eggs can't handle light speed, I guess, so they have to
I think
slower.
One of the things that people are looking out for in every episode of this show is that it all has to tie into the main arc of the story, which is that there's a guy hunting down the child character, or the Empire is hunting down the child character. Yeah. This episode doesn't have any of that whatsoever. In fact, he doesn't even have any trouble with the bad guys, the Imperials. He has trouble with the good guys, the rebels. He gets pulled over. He gets pulled over by the director of the show and the other actor whose name I can't remember.
Oh yeah, it's Dave Filoni, and I don't remember who the other guy is. But Dave Filoni's it's so funny, because obviously he's writing the show. He gave himself the coolest name ever. His name's Trapper Wolf, and you're like, that's the coolest fucking thing I've ever heard.
Halfway through the episode, he gets pulled over by Trapper Wolf, the Dave Filoni's character.
Yeah.
He then crash lands on an ice world, which I gotta say, one of the problems with the later Star Wars movies is that whenever you go to a desert planet, it's the same. Despite the fact that they're given different names, it looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Whenever you go to a forest planet, it's a different name, but it looks exactly the same. They managed to... We've been to ice planets before, several times. This one's different, and it looks different, too. They give it, a different... instead of it just being completely flat like Hoth, or, big shearing... what is it? Temples, kind of like the Ilum or the Starkiller base.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any trees. It doesn't have any like a desert wasteland or tundra-ish. It has very Antarctic glacial kind of look to it. So you can tell it's different. And then the real reason Aiden doesn't like this episode is the third act climax, which is the spiders.
I don't like the
and
spiders.
how they get everywhere. Baby Yoda throughout the episode is eating the eggs of the passenger who...
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. That's the thing that made everyone mad.
Everyone was throwing a big fit about that, but at the beginning of the episode, they say, oh, they're she needs to bring her eggs, they're unfertilized, whatever, which makes them regular-ass eggs. Have y'all not ever eaten eggs before? What has everyone in the world suddenly become pro-lifers? The third act climax consists of these spiders who are both little and giant, who are attacking Baby Yoda, the lady, and the Mandalorian. And I think the best part of this episode, though, is when the ship's about to take off, and you're like, they're in the home stretch, they got it, they're good. And then suddenly the giant spider jumps down on top of them, ruining the ship. It is... I agree. I think this is a very filler episode, but I think this is one of those episodes that is kind of needed to flesh out the universe a little bit. Yeah. Where it doesn't add too much, but what it does is that it makes us realize that the rebellion aren't just sitting on their asses. They're actively they're still patrolling the universe. Yeah. They're still out there. We're still gonna run into them no matter what. And there is definitely danger when traveling in space, because usually what you think of is you go to space, that's you're done. That's unless you're going to somewhere that's really bad. Yeah. You're not going to run into trouble. But even if you're just flying in space, you're still going to run into trouble in the Star Wars universe. Do you have anything more to say about this? I can't think of
No, I mean, there's really, like I said, there's not much to say about this one. I like Frog Lady. I liked her. I like
Frog Lady, and I like she's very expressive. You know what she's talking about. Yeah. I think we can move on to the next one where we meet Frog Husband.
If we do meet Frog Husband in the next one, they don't go to, it's not Mon Cala, is it? Even though it is a bunch of Quarren and Mon Calamari.
Somehow, I can't remember what my finals were about last week, but I remember the name of the planet was Trask, because that's the X-Men villain.
The Peter Dinklage character.
The Peter Dinklage character. They call it Trask, and I'm like, isn't there something Trask in Star Wars? And then I'm like, nah. The episode is they go to this water world, which now it makes... I was wondering why, because in the previous episode they say that the Frog Lady needs to travel to a planet, then it's the last remaining world that is hospitable towards her kind. I'm like, what does that mean? Do they need to go, are there no swamp plants anymore? It's like, no. They need to go to the nearest water world. That makes sense. They go to the water world. It is not ruled over, but the people who live on it are the fish people.
All the fish species.
So basically. You have the squid people, who are usually the bad guys in Star Wars, the Quarren.
They still are.
I had a little...
There is not one good Quarren.
They
do not exist.
I grew up with... one of my favorite action figures as a kid, and I probably still have it, is this really rare one. Came with a comic book. It's a Quarren X-Wing fighter, and he has this awesome X-Wing helmet that's only designed for him.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
I have no idea who he is, and this has absolutely nothing to do with the story, but on the water world, we have the fish people and the Mon Calamari and the Quarren, which are the squid people. And in this episode, we get to meet not only more of the Mandalorians, but people that we've met before who were in a previous Star Wars show.
Yeah, so this is right after as I said, the Quarren are still evil because they try to fucking betray him and they throw the kid into the fucking sea monster or whatever and break his little hover thing that he's had throughout the entire series up until that point.
That's right. It's gone after that too.
Yeah.
They can't merchandise that. Disney is making weird strides and they will build something up.
Which is funny because when they deliberately try to like make a toy thing, people are like, you just made it so you can make toys. I'm like, welcome to Star Wars. We've been doing this since the start. But yeah, anyway, we do meet the Death Watch, who are pretty major characters in the Clone Wars show, and one of them is Bo-Katan, who's one of the more well-known of them, and she is played by the same actress, Katie Sackhoff, a.k.a. the woman who should have been Captain Marvel, but wasn't, because they gave it to Brie Larson instead.
Speaking of Brie Larson, isn't there like... There's an Imperial officer in the show who looks remarkably like Brie. Is it not Brie Larson?
That woman looks nothing like Brie Larson.
I
what
think
are you
she
talking
does.
about?
The Imperial officer who is like answering, she's like the secretary.
She literally could not look less like Brie Larson.
That's such an
She
idiot.
has like, she's a totally different skin color. She has black hair. She couldn't look more different. You know what she looks like? She looks more like the henchwoman from Kingsman. That's who she looks like to me.
I think we're thinking about different people.
There's no, I don't remember another female Imperial officer in that show.
She has a very short role in the show. She's at the very end. She like talks to Moff Gideon about the death.
Yeah.
That's really okay.
Yeah, she does not look like Brie Larson at all.
Fuck it. Strike this from the entire podcast.
Strike this from the
Michael's
record.
an idiot. We meet the Death Watch characters who we've met before in the Clone Wars. They still very much act like they're... And this episode, we figure out, or they at least tell us that...
It kind of delves more into like the religious aspect
how
of
the Mandalorians work, because like going back to even the 70s, Boba Fett, the character, was never like George Lucas is like he's not a Mandalorian.
Yeah.
The idea of Boba Fett is that he is a deputy or a sheriff who goes around the galaxy in a suit of armor. It's kind of like the Cobb Vanth character.
Yeah.
And will like solve people's problems and then walk away. That's what he used to be. Then in the 2002 movie Attack of the Clones, we find out that it's Mandalorian armor. It's from this previous civilization, but that it's not that the Jango character or neither the Boba is actually a member of this like race or species or people. They just happen to have the armor.
Well, we also learned that Mando is more of a like orthodox Mandalorian, where like they introduced this idea in the last season where you have to keep your helmet on at all times or else you're like dishonored if you take it off. And that was a new idea, and I was wondering like how they'd explain that by introducing these other characters in the past shows, because they take their helmets off all the time, and that's just because they have a looser interpretation of it, which is again a very like interesting layer to add, because that's kind of how just religion works in general in the world, is people have different interpretations of it.
I loved coming from ever since I was a kid, just because we've been to like Christian or Catholic school, we've studied theology and like how all these different religions work either together or apart. The beautiful thing about this show is the complexity of how the Mandalorians think about themselves. So the people, the Death Watch, the Bo-Katan character, is actually from the planet Mandalore.
Yeah, she is from Mandalore.
But she does not have the reverence that the other characters do for the idea of the wearing the armor. She's from the planet. She's fought in like the war. She has come.
Well, it also kind of works in tandem with like, she started out in Clone Wars as an antagonist. She was a villain who did some pretty evil things. Like she killed a lot of innocent people. So it makes sense for her not to wear a helmet, because in a way that kind of highlights that she's this kind of morally ambiguous character who maybe isn't worthy to be like a real Mandalorian, which is again kind of this idea that they tease towards the very end of this season when she comes back eventually. Spoilers, but again, we're talking about spoilers. So. And
then when they obviously have to clash in how their religious or Mandalorian beliefs work, where the Pedro Pascal character, I know he has a name, but I'm just gonna call him.
He's the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
They call him Mando in the show, so we're gonna call him
Mando. The Mando character is like, you don't like. You're not Mandalorian. She's like, I am more Mandalorian than you will ever be because I come from the planet. Yeah. And then he's like, well, I follow like the Orthodox religion, and they also and we have this and that.
They also mentioned too that like, even though he's a more like Orthodox Mandalorian, that he seems to think that like the planet Mandalore is cursed after what happened, like in the Clone Wars, and also there was this kind of purge that they've referenced a couple times where like the Empire just came in and razed the place essentially.
The rest of this episode for that we
see Bosch as an Imperial officer.
That's right.
He was pretty cool. There are so many cool Imperial officer characters in this season that only last like a couple minutes and then die instantly.
They do a good job of, even though the stormtroopers are kind of still weak as fuck in all of these
they have to be.
For the on-screen Imperials, for the bad guys of the show, they do a really good job in casting like the people who can play them the best. Yeah. Who will leave the best impact with you. So the rest of this episode is Mandalorian leaves Baby Yoda. This is yet another Baby Yoda-less episode of the season. Yeah. He leaves them with the frog people. They then go it's not a Star Destroyer. Is it a Star Destroyer?
No, it's like a cruiser.
It's a cargo ship is taking off. The Mandalorians steal the cargo ship. They have a good fight,
and we find out that Bo's looking for Gideon because he has the Darksaber,
which will play an integral part in the rest of the season. But at that point in time, it's just a little tease that it happens.
Because she has like a big past with the Darksaber because obviously she followed Pre Vizsla, voiced by Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau plays two characters in Star Wars, and they are not connected.
He plays Pre Vizsla. He plays the monkey guy from Solo.
He does?
Yeah, it's him.
So then he plays three characters.
Who's the other character?
He's in the first episode of
that's right. Yeah, he's in the first season.
He's literally the giant blue tank man.
No, yeah, that tank man. I think they did actually establish in canon that guy also is in Vizsla. So that would make sense.
Is there anything from this episode that stands out to you, just that we haven't talked about?
Well, the only other thing they mentioned at the very end is they finally have that big name drop. He's like, yeah, go here, you'll find Ahsoka Tano. And then people are like, oh, and then people at home. That is one thing I should mention too. When my parents watched this episode, they were kind of like, who is the Katie Sackhoff character? I'm like, she's from the show. And they're like, I don't care, it's from the cartoon.
Exactly. There's such a... So what they're referencing to is the Clone Wars show, which started back in 2008 with that god-awful theatrical movie that was supposed to be only 3 episodes.
To call it a movie it's a pilot episode.
It's a pilot
that somehow got a theatrical release.
And it's not like George Lucas was like, oh, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to release this, and everyone's going to go see it, and everyone's going to be like, oh, that sucked, but we gave him his money. No, the point is that he made something that he was really proud of, and that he's like, I want everybody to see this on a big screen. I don't want it to be just stuck at homes on television. Yeah. So that's why it came out in theaters. But Aiden is right. It is a pilot episode. That's when we meet the Ahsoka character, and then the rest of the show is about them establishing who she is up until this last season, which came out. This show has been going on for the past decade.
Yeah, because they stopped midway through once Disney bought it.
With the name drop of Ahsoka, it's all the people who loved the show growing up. So our generation, essentially, people who are turning in their early 20s right now know who this is, and they followed the show up until this point. But everybody else just in the dark. There's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, but overall, as far as this episode goes, I did really like it. This one was also actually directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who did the kind of village episode last season.
She's the chick in Jurassic World.
Yeah, the one who runs in the high heels, and then everyone got all mad that she ran in high heels.
Despite the fact that you can, if you train well enough, and she's probably walking in high heels all day, you can probably still walk in high heels.
I like how it's a movie with dinosaurs, and that's the most ridiculous part. But yeah, I thought this episode was much stronger than the one she directed last season. So yeah, good episode overall.
Did she direct the Seven Samurai episode last season?
Yeah, with the ATS teeth. Okay. Yeah.
Then the next episode is after Frog husband.
Yeah, he's got to go get his ship fixed because the fucking Mon Calamari did the bad job fixing it, so he can't get very far. So he goes back to planet from the first movie, and we're introduced to the characters from the last season, being the Cardoon, the Carl Weathers character, and even the one guy from the very first episode who plays
him? Who plays the blue guy?
Oh, I'm trying to forget his name. Horatio Sands from SNL.
Oh my gosh. So we meet up with that, and I love how like he recognizes the Mandalorian, and he's like he's still like scared of him too. Yeah. They discover they like make a trade with him. I forget what the trade is, but the payoff is that they have to destroy the last Imperial outpost that's on their planet.
And it's also cool that you get to see like how that place has grown since he left, and they had that big battle there, because you get to like, it's gone from like this kind of seedy Tatooine, Mos Eisley type place to like a legitimate like trade civilization.
Because in the last season, I think Mando killed a bunch of the like shady bounty hunters who were like living there.
Yeah.
And then the character of Cara Dune, she is now the new, or no, at this point
she's the marshal now.
She's the marshal, but she's not an official thing at this point.
Yeah, she's just kind of the sheriff.
And they spend the rest of the episode, they travel to the Imperial base. Mm-hmm. They have a plan that they want to blow it up. They are inside, and they slowly start to figure out why the Baby Yoda character is integral to the entire
That's like the big
show.
It seems like this is the first big hint of like the big, like how the Empire became the First Order, and the big like how potentially like how Palpatine comes back with the whole cloning thing, because you see like the clone vials, and then you're like, he's got a big M count, and then all the prequel, all the people hated the prequels.
They fucking name drop midichlorians.
God damn it, midichlorians again. I don't understand why there's such a passionate hatred for midichlorians, because they're mentioned like once and never brought up ever
It's not
again.
Just that they're mentioned once, it's that there's, with storytelling, like what if Harry Potter was, oh, magic? It's because the atoms in your bloodstream line up and the others don't, and the other one, and it's like, okay, but why did we need that? Like what people love in storytelling is the sense of mysticism. You don't exactly know.
That's why the Force is so interesting, because it's like this sort of, people complain all the time when they're like, how come the Force lets you shoot lightning out? How come you can teleport? It's because it's this totally blanket, indescribable power that no one really understands.
And I know that people always get super angry when they bring in a new, as you said, a new Force power. Like if we list off them all throughout the years, like going from the original trilogy to the later one, there's like, you can use, the first time we see it is that you can use it to like change people's minds. You can make stuff like, I think Obi-Wan taps a wall over there, which is before Darth Vader chokes some guy before it. Mm-hmm. So we know it has like telekinetic powers. Luke grabs his lightsaber with it. Then the Emperor uses his lightning. Then there's no rules to it, which is how a plot element like this would work. You have to slowly introduce stuff over time. There's...
well, it kind of goes back to like what I was saying earlier, where how this season is kind of bringing it into the bigger world of Star Wars, because like if that theory's true and they do need Baby Yoda so they can actually clone Palpatine again, like that makes him like a super important character for the rest of the series.
If they happen to get enough of whatever they need, then potentially they could bring the Emperor character back, which is they didn't name drop Palpatine though. You just see that there are clones in there, and
it could be Palpatine, or it could also be Snoke. Like you don't know which one is which.
Probably
Palpatine first, because Palpatine says, "I made Snoke," so it's probably chicken came for the egg.
On my mental notes, I can remember only two other things about this episode. One is Jean's guy. Do you know who Jean's guy is?
Oh yeah, the guy who was stuck in the. There's a extra in the background that they didn't, or no, there was a crew member in the background.
Yeah. It's like, have you ever watched the Pirates of the Caribbean movie? At the very end, all the pirates are like rushing to their posts, and suddenly there's just a guy in sunglasses and a cowboy hat in the back. Yeah,
that seems like more common with like TV shows though, because like, but at least here it was like an honest mistake. In Game of Thrones, the last season
didn't have like a truck on the mountain or something.
In Game of Thrones, there's a part where there's just a Starbucks cup on the table, and you're like, oh, that's annoying and weird. How'd that happen? And then in the last episode of the show, there's a water bottle. I'm like, okay, if it happens once, that's one thing. When it happens twice, that means you just didn't give a shit about the entire show.
There was a bunch of Aquafina water bottles at the coronation of King Arthur in Merlin. I found that fucking hilarious.
It's funny.
Then the last thing about this episode that I can recall being of note is they have a chase with all of the speeder bikes.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the scout troopers and the tank that they steal, which is like a toy from the 1970s, which is so funny.
Yeah, or like kind of similar to the Fishwoman episode. It's not like the quickest episode. Like there's not always stuff happening, but at least with this, you learn enough about like the story. Like they learn Gideon's still alive. They learn this. They learn that. Like yada yada yada.
It's a good story. They're characters that we like, and then they have good action at the end. I'd say this is a pretty good and essential episode to watch. The next one. Yeah. If I can...
Next one is my favorite episode.
Which one is this?
This is the triumphant return of Ahsoka episode.
Okay, so
this is, I mean, this is a great episode, not just for nostalgic reasons, but just because I think it's a very well made episode. But like, it finally reintroduces the character of Ahsoka, which is. What an absolute roller coaster of a journey that character has had. Like
from
she's
only being like not just like disliked, from being
universally
hated by like not only Star Wars fans but just like people who know about the franchise in general.
Yeah.
Coming from my standpoint, which is as a kid, I didn't like hate Ahsoka. I just didn't see why she was important to like the story of Star Wars.
Like you hear like, oh, this is a person who's Anakin's apprentice, and you're like, oh, that's a pretty big deal. And then like you see her, and you're like, oh, this is just some Looney Tunes shit. Like, but yeah, and then over the longer she's in Clone Wars, the more people start to like her. Then she shows up as kind of a young adult in Rebels, and then she gets developed even more in that. And we see like. They bring her back through time travel, which is pretty stupid, but hey, I'm glad she's here. That she would be in the show otherwise, so whatever. And then we see her now, and she's still the same character that we've all fallen in love with, but now she's a bit wiser. She's a bit more serious, but she's still kind of got that kind of wit and charisma that she has in the show.
This was a very
or in the cartoon rather.
This was a very samurai looking episode, or like there's a lot of Asian influence, especially with like the little town they go to.
Yeah.
The set design for the palace that they have with the kind of koi pond.
Yeah, what I love is that there's in like this big like final battle part. There's like Mando and Ahsoka are both on like opposite sides of the door of each other. And on Mando's side, it's a full-blown Western shootout town. Mm-hmm. And you got like a Michael Biehn. 80s,
That's right, yeah.
80s action movie star Michael Biehn is this kind of henchman character, and they're having a full-blown Mexican standoff. And then on the other side of that, it's this koi pond with the Bushido trees. And I think actually the woman who is kind of the main villain of this episode is Bruce Lee's goddaughter.
What?
Weirdly enough, I read that somewhere, and they have like a full-blown slow-paced kind of methodical like samurai fight, which makes perfect sense because samurai films inspired westerns, and westerns inspired Star Wars, so it makes perfect sense for those two scenes to kind of mirror each other. I thought it was such a brilliant, nice little moment, and I think it really showed. Dave Filoni directed this episode, which I think makes perfect sense because this Ahsoka is his baby. That's his character that he spent like all his love and time creating, so it only makes sense for her first live action appearance that he direct that. And I think this episode really showed that he has talent when it comes to directing, because like directing a cartoon and shows and movies that are live action are like two very different processes.
Completely
so
different.
I think he did a very good job showing that he is capable of doing that.
I never thought it about that way with the dichotomy between the two fights, which that is I've never thought about.
Yeah,
before.
if I do a video on the show, I'm just gonna talk about this episode because I think it's such a brilliant.
It sums
episode
up everything
from a filmmaking standpoint. Yeah.
I remember they have if you want to delve more into, if you're not sick of Mandalorian yet and you want to delve into a little bit more of it, watch the little. The mini documentary where they have all the directors sit down and talk about it, because the Dave Filoni guy The director talks about how he started working for George Lucas back in the 2000s, back in the ooze, as they call it.
The ooze.
I'm number 3. I'm off the show. See you, ladies and gentlemen. Back when he started working for George Lucas, he had just jump-started Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, that's what that was his claim to fame at the time, was Last Airbender.
And he gets a call saying that George Lucas wants to do a cartoon show, and he remembers that they already did a cartoon show, but George Lucas... An awesome cartoon show by award-winning animator Gennady Tartakovsky, creator of fucking Samurai Jack. Didn't he do Powerpuff Girls as well?
Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Laboratory.
Just all... If you remember Nickelodeon and Cartoon... Was it
Cartoon Network?
If you remember Cartoon Network in the early 2000s, he probably had something to do with that. So Dave Filoni just jump-started Avatar: The Last Airbender, gets a call saying that they need a like directorial role, because George Lucas doesn't want to direct any of the show.
Yeah, he doesn't want to invest that much time into a cartoon.
He wants to invest time in that. He wants to like give idea, because George Lucas is an idea guy. He has really good ideas. He just doesn't know, or I'm not going to say he doesn't know how to write. He just has a hard time with it, I guess. So then they bring Dave Filoni in, and Dave Filoni has such reverence for like the Star Wars, not like the stories or the universe, but the mentality of that it's a positive escapism experience where you learn philosophical morals through good storytelling, essentially.
Yes.
He has such reverence for that he gets hired for it, but he's so afraid of letting the fan base down, letting George Lucas down.
Yeah.
And so seeing how that has edged from him being afraid to step into this role to being the highlight of this, not only like the show, but this specific episode, is such a big journey for just one guy.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Like, I think they are releasing a kind of second season to that Mandalorian behind the scenes show.
Yeah,
I think they're making another one of those, and I really hope someone had footage of like the first time Filoni sees Ahsoka, like with Rosario Dawson in her full makeup, like. That must have been such like a profound experience to see this character you've spent your life making.
This is my baby that I have gestated over the point of the decade.
Yeah, I imagine he already like was crying like a baby when he heard Ahsoka's voice in Rise of Skywalker, where he's like, "Oh my god, my character is here."
Yeah. Then the next thing I remember specifically about that episode...
I think I just heard my sister yell through the mic. God damn it.
The next thing I remember about that episode is that I thought they were going to do a cop-out where it's like, they bring Baby Yoda to Ahsoka and she says she can't train him. And I'm like, okay, well, this is going to pad out the rest of it. We got to find another guy. Yeah. Well, this was a one-off for Ahsoka. And then she goes to explain that the reason that she doesn't want to train the Baby Yoda character is because he has such a strong attachment to...
Well, at this point, we actually can't call him Baby Yoda, because...
Oh, yeah, they introduced his name, which is Grogu. Like it or hate it, that's his name now.
I don't even care about the name. Like, the name's fine or whatever, but just his reactions in the name where he just goes,
yeah.
Go!
when he suddenly, like... Whenever the Mandalorian or any other character tries to talk to the child, like, child doesn't know that he's like being talked to, but once like they name drop him, he like looks up at every character who does it, which we'll get to that in the next episode.
Yeah.
They have this whole thing where she says that he can't be trained because he has such a strong attachment to the character of the Mandalorian. And at first I'm like, oh, that's kind of a cop-up. Then I'm like, wait a minute. If anybody knows why it's bad for Jedi in their like young stages to have an attachment to a parental figure, then it's Ahsoka, because she watched as Anakin, her master, her trainer, her teacher, went through the exact same thing. She didn't like watch it happen when his mom died, but specifically when that incident led to everything else happening.
Well, she makes a pretty direct reference to that when she says, like, there's fear in Grogu, and she goes, like, I've seen this before, and it ain't good. Like,
and the fact that it's so subtle means that, like, you can say that it's from elsewhere, but people are usually saying that it's about Anakin, it's about how he turns into Darth Vader.
It's 100% from Anakin.
And The last thing I can remember about this episode is that he gets the MacGuffin, which is the staff, the Beskar staff, which he's going to use later. It's kind of like that Chekhov's gun cliche, where if you give it to him, he's going to have to use it by the end.
Also, this is another episode that heavily references KOTOR again. Because you see her bodyguard droids, they confirm are later versions of HK droids from the show, which is again just awesome.
Weird reference. That probably had... I thought it had nothing to do with the overarching story of Star Wars, because it's referencing something really weird, is that the planet they go to is named Corvus.
Yeah.
And the ship...
Have we seen Corvus in anything before?
No.
It sounds familiar.
It's because it's the ship that the... do you remember the Special Forces lady from Battlefront 2?
Oh, that's right. It is called that.
It is. That's the name of the ship, and I'm thinking, oh well, it's a coincidence. They're never gonna reference EA's Battlefront 2.
Surely there will not be any references to Battlefront 2 from EA in this show ever.
Going on to the next episode, which is...
That's also a very good episode. That one's called The Tragedy.
Oh no! Okay. We're watching this the first time, and it's all happy. They finally get to the Jedi planet.
It opens up with my favorite cold open of the show, which is just like Grogu's just sitting there doing whatever, and Mando just goes, Grogu, and he looks up and you just hear him like chuckling.
That we have this really like heartfelt, wholesome, emotional first part of the episode, and then as soon as that happens, they have the gall to put up the name of the episode, which is The Tragedy, which is the best like Curb Your Enthusiasm moment of any Star Wars thing, because it's so happy going into it, and then it's just fucking the tragedy
in big yellow letters.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, they go down there. They go to Tython, which is another major planet from the Old Republic days, which is like, I think it's like one of the Jedi home. There are so many different Jedi Sith homeworlds that it's hard to keep track at this point.
He went to go find the original Jedi temple, and there are like 10.
Like when they say in the 9th movie, they're like, Exegol is the birthplace of the Sith. I'm like, you said Korriban wrong. So there's so many different ones, but anyway, they go there. Baby Yoda's sitting there. They're doing all their stuff, and then Slave One comes in, and then they're whoa, 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 like
out of nowhere.
Literally out of nowhere, just Slave One goes in, and Michael and I are just screeching like a bunch of chimpanzees, and we're like, "This is it! This is it! This is it!"
And okay, so I'm thinking, okay, Slave One, like this, it could have been. It's going to be the Cobb Vanth thing. Someone else is driving it, and then no. Tamora Morrison comes out, who is the actor from the previous one, and all he wants is his armor.
But first he says, like, are you a Jedi? And he goes, I'm just a man trying to make my way in the universe.
Trying to make my way, like my father. And
I'm like, he said the thing. But as he's not the only one who's there, though, as we find out.
Mulan makes a comeback.
Yeah,
good Mulan!
Yeah, Ming-Na Wen's character somehow survived. Like, even despite getting fucking shot in the abdomen, she survived. Because of robot magic, which once again shows that no one in this series fucking dies.
There's no such thing as death. Like, if you die in Star Wars, that means nothing. How many times has Liam Neeson come back after dying in literally the first movie? So then it comes down to they have a brief argument where Boba Fett is trying to get his armor back.
Boba Fett's like, give me my shit, and then stormtroopers start showing up, and they decide to team up against them, and we get like... This one was directed by, I think it was directed by Robert Rodriguez, and I guess he was a last-minute replacement for a director who showed up. And, like, if that's the case, like, Robert Rodriguez is someone who's obviously known for kind of, like, making these big spectacle movies on a very low, like, guerrilla-style budget. So you can tell, like, this was an episode that, despite it being, like, visually very good, it's still, like, a very minimalist episode. Because they filmed in, like, Nevada or something for this.
No, they filmed here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They filmed here. I remember seeing a TikTok last year. God, I'm number 4, getting kicked off the show. There was a girl who was hiking up in, maybe it was somewhere in maybe in the Inland Empire. She's watching as all of these stormtroopers and like the people on set are like kind of talking, and they're in that valley kind of area. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I think this is where the next season of Mandalorian is filming. And then we actually see it in this episode. It's the space where they're like inhabiting is really small, but they still do so much with it that you're still on board with it. And it is a very Robert Rodriguez kind of project where he takes the grand idea of this giant battle, but he condenses it down to this like very small kind of
Yeah, it was
grassy,
probably
rocky
very
area.
cheap to actually film, I would think.
One of the coolest things that I can recall from the previous season was that when they ran out of stormtrooper like armor, because you're Star Wars, you only have a limited amount of stormtrooper armor that you print, or like the rest you can just add in later using computers. So they call up the all across America, at least I think, there's a group of people that call themselves the 501st. Yeah. And they all assemble. They all have their own individual stormtrooper armor or other costumes, and they will assemble for parades, hospital visits for sick kids, sick adults, and they just are all around great people that just donate their time to be Star Wars, to be Star Wars.
Yeah, to be Star Wars.
They call up the SoCal region and they say, hey, anybody in stormtrooper armor want to come out today and today only. And there's a shop owner, Mission Viejo, who drove over. He's actually in both the episode and in like the little bonus feature they made about it.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm not sure if they really did that with this episode, but whenever like you see a giant group of stormtroopers, there's a huge insinuation that they probably called up this parade union to come together and film it. Mulan is a sniper. Boba Fett does cool Boba Fett stuff.
When he puts the armor back on, that's like the thank God the gangster's back moment. When he just fucking owns people.
This is not the introduction of the Death Troopers, because we've seen them in
the Dark Troopers, not the Death Troopers.
The Dark Troopers, because we've seen them in various media since the DOS game Dark Forces back in like the 90s. Mm-hmm. And then they've had little bits of story here and there. There's sometimes robots or sometimes people.
They show up in Rebels at one point.
Yeah, in Rebels they were just like stormtrooper robots, and they were big and strong, but they weren't like especially tactile. The point in this show is that they're all around just like the strongest thing that has like the biggest weapon that has ever been and we're no stranger to having like droids that can fight, but these are droids that are nearly indestructible, that can fly. They have if you have any semblance of power in Star Wars, they probably have that power, essentially. They come down, they steal Baby Yoda off of his meditation rock, and they fly up to the Star Destroyer where the Moff Gideon character is. Anything else specifically from this episode?
No, I mean, it's just like seeing Boba Fett again back in action is just the coolest thing in the world. Like, they did a great job bringing back that character, and they also, like, before this, like, it's always this idea, like, Boba Fett's a bad guy. Boba Fett's the guy who does bad things, but he's just the guy who gets paid to do stuff. Like, he's a mercenary, so he's kind of just like, I just do whatever.
The fact that Boba Fett is bound by honor, and that he's going to like that he trades his armor in exchange for safety of the kid. Yeah, he says that at the beginning, and it's like, okay, the kid's not gonna die, and Boba Fett's gonna get his armor back. But then that leads him to, my promise was broken. Your kid is now like in really bad danger. Yeah. I have my armor back. I have to help you out. Yeah. So that puts a really strong twist on it. And also, Mulan has to follow him for not only the rest of the episode, but the rest of the show, because he saved her life.
Yeah, it's like their code.
So...
But then the next episode, they gotta figure out where Gideon is, and like they need someone with Imperial experience, so... They bring back Bill Burr.
Of all people to bring back the guy who has openly stated that he doesn't like Star Wars. Yeah. They bring back, which I don't think anybody has a problem with it. I think we all think it's funny because he is very well known for a comedy bit that he used to do where he would rant about how much he hated Star Wars. Yeah. Whereas he's a comedian. He's going to take something that is well known in the public eye and he's going to make fun of it.
Michael, you're not allowed to dislike Star Wars.
And I think that's why both his audience and like the Star Wars audience like to see him on there. Not because he's just being paid for the money. He's it's how to best describe it. It's because we're able to see him both like in and out of character.
And I feel like in this one we're able to see him like kind of show off his... I think your leg is picking up your leg shaking a lot. I think we're picking up the audio of that a little bit. But I think a big thing that I liked about this his return of this character is that we get to explore him as a character more, Whereas before he was, just the mercenary guy who was kind of a dick.
He had an arm with a gun on his back. Which...
That's right, he did. He doesn't have that in this episode, but we get to learn a lot about his past and why he's no longer an Imperial and all this stuff.
Shout out to fucking Battlefront 2.
Yeah, and they reference Battlefront 2. And it blew my mind that they actually referenced that fucking video game. It's a direct reference to that game.
In this,
because he's talking to this Imperial officer who's
the bad guy from the Kingsman.
Yeah, well, he's not. The guy from Kingsman. He's also the Night King in Game of Thrones. Again, just a really good performance from an Imperial officer who dies immediately. But yeah, he's explaining that story, and as he's explaining it, like, you don't get like a direct like my parents died on this planet or whatever. It's just like him having a conversation where you're like, that was pretty fucking shitty, wasn't it? Wasn't it? And so you learn a lot of his character. Like, you kind of get the sense that he has like PTSD almost from serving with them. It's really like had this mental scarring on him.
One of the things that I like when I showed my folks the end of the season, I didn't show them this episode because it kind of was like, not because it was bad, but just because it felt like filler. It felt like they had to do something before they actually did something. I think in the grand scheme of Star Wars, or The Mandalorian, you can skip this episode and be fine. But at the same time, it has such integral character moments for even just the smaller characters on this list that it's very important to like the story of what happens to everybody, even after who even if you're serving in the Empire, what happens to those characters even after. You remember the really sad part of this episode? It was when they're driving a tank of explosive materials that they have raided, and they finally make it to the Imperial base where they're supposed to be sneaking into and getting the coordinates to the Moff Gideon character. And as soon as they pull up, because they've just defeated like hordes of pirates who are attacking them, all the stormtroopers are applauding for them and saluting them. Like they're all so happy that they made it home safe. And now you're feeling, oh shit. Are we
gonna try to humanize the space Nazis?
I'm a shitty person for fucking not liking the stormtroopers in all these episodes when they turn out to just be people, and that's what we kind of figure out throughout this episode.
Yeah, but it is a fillery episode, but I did overall enjoy it just because Bill Burr's character is fleshed out more, and they made him a much more interesting character. Which then brings us to the last episode, which
came out this Thursday, which we have called Mando Monday because you can't call it Mando Thursday.
Yeah, we get together on Mando Monday on a Thursday, Friday
Thursday
at
night,
midnight.
Friday morning.
But we watch it all together, and then it starts out as like kind of the typical fare, like he's fighting the Dark Trooper. He has a fight with Moff Gideon. He gets Bo-Katan back, and they do all the typical Star Wars stuff together. And then he shows up. We knew all the past episodes have introduced like a major character, and they released like a poster that coincides with that character. So you knew someone big was gonna show up, but you weren't sure exactly who.
Usually what happens is they name drop a character before it happens. Like, oh, you're gonna meet more Mandalorians. And you're like, okay,
when you see the Boba Fett armor, you're like, okay, Boba Fett has to show up at some point.
And then like they say, oh, you're gonna meet Ahsoka Tano, and the next week you know Ahsoka's gonna show up. He comes out of nowhere, and they don't even like say like when he shows up in his X-wing. Yeah, they don't even say that's like an old rebellion. They have no fucking.
They're like, oh, it's one X-wing, and like at their like, who's that? And then you hear one X-wing, and you're like, who is crazy enough to take one? Oh.
And they don't show his face for the longest time for like budgetary constraints, I guess. But then at the same time,
it's kind of like he kind of gets his own kind of Vader hallway scene from Rogue One, where he's kind of just killing all the Dark Troopers, and then you're so excited. He goes in there, he takes the hood off, and the CGI is not great on him, but it's still really cool to see Luke Skywalker actually make it appear. I didn't think we were going to see Luke Skywalker until like the end of the series.
I thought they were going to do literally what I thought they were going to do. There were a lot of like, okay, who's the Jedi who's going to come pick up Baby Yoda or Grogu? And a lot of the speculation was that it was going to be either the kid from Fallen Order, the EA video game, Cal Kestis, who his whole mission in that game is to find like the special like MacGuffin that will tell him where all the Force sensitive kids in the universe are, so that he can train them as Jedi.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be the main character of the Rebels show, Ezra Bridger. Is that his name? Which the last time.
Oh god, we didn't even mention Thrawn from the other episode.
Yeah, they name drop Thrawn, who is a big villain in like the extended stories of Star Wars that was only brought to like the movies or TV shows in the Rebels show.
Yeah.
But they have the biggest cop-out worst ending of any show I've ever watched.
Yeah, it kind of just disappears.
The biggest good guy of the show, which is the kid who's trying to become a Jedi.
Space Aladdin.
Space Aladdin. And the biggest bad guy that almost Star Wars has ever seen, this Thrawn character, this blue alien Imperial officer guy, are stuck in a ship, and suddenly someone presses like the escape pod and they jettison into the unknown. And that is the resolution of the show.
Yeah.
There is nothing else. If I don't like that show to begin with, but if I did, I would have felt like that is the biggest cop-out of... Yeah. Because it's a Disney Channel show. You can't kill anybody. So I thought it was going to be Ezra Bridger who comes back. I was in no way, shape, or form expecting for name drop time, spoiler alert, Luke Skywalker, voiced by Mark Hamill, to come on and
the voice by Mark Hamill was the most surprising thing, because I didn't think he could do that voice anymore of sounding like young Luke Skywalker. I thought that was really impressive how he's still able to do that.
I'm sure it went through several levels of Matthew
and I think it's great that it's Mark Hamill again, but I don't understand how Star Wars hasn't been able to figure out how to de-age people when Marvel seems to have figured out how to do it to a T. Like you look at Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, like the de-aging in those movies is incredible, and here it just looks so weird and uncanny valley. Maybe it's the hair, but
I have a couple problems with the Marvel one, specifically Robert Downey Jr. teenager.
That one I don't like. The other one's like decent.
I also do not like Ant-Man 2's old Captain America girlfriend. Like old Agent Carter looks uncanny, and then young what's his name? The doctor from Ant-Man 2, the physicist, the professor guy.
Oh yeah.
Everything else looks great, but I can kind of see that influence here with.
Like we see, like Rogue One's like a whole another can of worms because
they actually like digitally 3D made his face and then had to render that.
Well, yeah, they're reviving a dead actor, and to me that's just a line you shouldn't cross. Like it's just really weird and uncomfortable, and like if you're gonna bring back the character, just recast him. Like, trying to use CGI to recreate, like it seems like you're playing God a little bit, and it's creepy, and I don't like it.
My sister was showing me. So this is at the time they shot Rogue One, Carrie Fisher hadn't passed away yet.
Yeah.
The girl they brought in to play Leia, and then they put the dots on her face so that they could record a performance, looks like Carrie Fisher if you look her up. The guy who they brought on to play Tarkin, just the face thing in Rogue One, he doesn't like look like Tarkin to a T, but they're still like, if you put him in the costume and you did like a little makeup on him, he could have been the Tarkin character. I forget the actor's name at this point.
I think it's the guy from Deathly Hallows.
It is the guy. Right? He's the new evil minister of magic in Deathly, and that's all I know him from because I don't watch BBC. But
or you could have even shot it in a way where like we know who. Like if you look at like the back of his head, you're like, oh, you know who that is. Like if it was just the back of his head, but then the moment he turns around and it just. Not only does it look uncanny valley, I don't think it's going to age well in the future.
No.
I think when you look at it back on it, it's going to just look worse and worse and worse over time.
The one biggest problem with this last episode is the fact that they use the de-aging or even just like deep fake with Luke. And did you notice that he doesn't blink?
Yeah, I did. There was some like everything about it just seemed a little off.
He doesn't blink, and keep in mind
they should have just gotten Sebastian Stan because people keep saying he looks just like him, and you should have just picked him.
Under makeup and using the tiniest bit of computer stuff, you could have made him look almost precisely like Mark Hamill.
But again, it makes perfect sense for the character to be there. I'm glad he's there, but it does raise the question though, because after you get like that emotional goodbye from Grogu and Mando, it kind of makes you wonder, like, they confirmed a third season. Where the hell are they going to go from here?
Not only where the hell are they going to go, but we also, unfortunately, know the future of Luke Skywalker. And
yeah.
Look, don't worry, everybody.
Luke Skywalker's going to take Yoda back to his school, and he's going to be like, hey, Yoda, meet my nephew, Ben. And Baby Yoda's like, oh, shit.
Here we go again.
Hide and seek championship. Let's go.
Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. We have a good 20 years before Luke Skywalker tries to kill his nephew.
Yeah.
We have a good 20. So that's not going to happen for a while.
He thinks about killing his nephew.
He ignites his lightsaber and puts it over his throat. We know this.
He doesn't put it over. He's a bad... Well, okay.
But here's the thing: the Baby Yoda ages very slowly, so we actually don't know where he is in these sequels.
Well, now, because my prediction for the way the series was going to end was going to be Luke fighting Baby Yoda. Now, I think the way the series is going to end is going to be Rey fighting Baby Yoda after the events of Rise of Skywalker. That's my prediction.
Oh, you think that Mandalorian is going to go, like, super far in the future?
I think, like, it would make perfect sense for the next season to be, like, a significant time jump.
Yeah.
To push it closer to Force Awakens and show that, like, you know, Gideon or Thrawn or whoever's in charge of the First Order now, or the Empire, to become the First Order or whatever. And that kind of, like, shows the transition of that. But it sounds like, we'll talk about the other shows in just a second, but it sounds like they're trying to do the cinematic universe thing where all those shows eventually converge into one thing.
Some things that aren't needed in season 3, but they've touched upon, and we know that they're trying to bridge the gap between these movies are like...
I just feel like the show is going to miss something without... I mean, I'm sure Baby Yoda will show up, or Grogu will show up again, but without that dynamic constantly being there, it's going to be like a totally different show. It
will be a different show, but at the same time, I think when this was first described to me, the Mandalorian as a show, just from that first episode alone, I don't know if it was you or someone else that said, Michael, it's like if Star Wars was just John Wick because of how merciless the main character is and how cool the action is. I could be down for a season of that, him meeting up with more of his allies, and then...
Well, it sounds like what's going to happen next. The only, like, kind of thread that was kind of left in the open for the show was Mando now has the Darksaber because he beat Gideon.
Oh, they're going to go to Mandalore, and they're going to do that.
Yeah, and also there's going to be, like, some tension between him and Bo-Katan because she wanted the Darksaber, and now the only thing she has to do is fight him in combat or take it, or, you know. So that's probably going to be the main conflict for the next season. But again, like, that sounds fine and everything, but it's going to be a challenge to kind of lose that major thread that Baby Yoda or Grogu or whatever, that the kid brought to the show.
But this is also something that I really appreciate Disney Star Wars with right now, is that they, like, Baby Yoda would have sold so much more merch if he's in every episode, and if the last season was just the Baby Yoda season.
Yeah.
What if they take him out of the picture and Disney is like, okay, well, what merchandise are we going to be able to sell now? So this was a really good storytelling thing for them to be able to sacrifice one of their main money makers of 2020 just so that we have closure and a good story.
Yeah.
It's a corporation. That's not what their idea. Their idea is to make something that's profitable and able to sell. Mm-hmm. But once you figure out that, like, they're actually more story inclined than you would assume, that's when you're like, okay, this is in good hands.
Yeah, I do think that, like, my hard prediction now is that last moment of the show is going to be fucking Daisy Ridley finding Grogu, and they're going to go off and do the new thing.
I hope that I like those characters. I like Pin. I like
Pin.
Pin. Poe and Rey, and I know they don't want to come back to do more stuff because of how poorly they were treated, both, like, on and off set.
Both like by Disney, but also just by the people watching them, and how fucking vicious they were.
They shouldn't have been. Love or hate the new movies, these are people, and they don't deserve to be.
But again, that's also, like, I guarantee you 10 years from now they're going to have different opinions on that, just like people have different opinions now on the prequels, because there'll be something else to hate by that point.
It's all about the generations that grow up with it, and...
Because, you know, that like again, we'll talk about the shows in a second, but it seems that the responses to the prequels are vastly different now than they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago when they released. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But overall, a very good conclusion to the show, to a great conclusion to a great season. Even though that Luke Skywalker is a bit uncanny valley and the special effects quality wasn't great, it's still great to see that character there again. Same with R2-D2 there again. It was just a really cool moment, and as cool as it is, it does kind of leave you with this feeling of uncertainty of where can this show go next, and what are they going to have, what's going to be like the gimmick to replace the Baby Yoda gimmick that it's had for the past 2 seasons.
Starting off our jump into the rest of the shows that they have created, the end of this episode, which you think ends with an end credit scene. You look at the little timeline, and there's like still 10 minutes left of this episode, and it's the credits. But then I think you were asking, is there anything left? And I'm like, I skip ahead, and I'm like, oh yes, there is. Yeah. And you see the Jabba's palace on Tatooine, which we had last.
Yeah, and you're like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Well, what are we doing back here? Who's still here? We see that the director's character from episodes, because the director plays the Bib Fortuna character, the Tan character. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? He plays that. I don't know if he plays it in the new one though. So, but it is still for some reason my dad's favorite character in all of Star Wars. And
at first you're wondering, like, how is he alive? And then he just dies instantly.
Which, strangely enough, that comes from the books.
Yeah.
Boba Fett comes back, kills Bib Fortuna, and takes back the crime syndicate.
Which is funny, because then you see after he shoots Bib Fortuna and kind of sits on the throne all cool, like, with Fennec kind of, drinking her booze, the book of Boba Fett pops up on screen. You're like, what the fuck is that? It says coming next year. You're like, oh, this is a new show.
So Disney, they had the balls they're like, okay, well, here's our list of upcoming shows. 10 of which are now 11 of which are Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because they had the balls to list off all of them, but not list off the Boba Fett show. That is so good on their part.
Yeah, it was good to keep it serious. You can tell, like, John.
Do you mind if I turn on the light?
Oh yeah, go ahead. That's the wrong switch. You gotta push the center button. Yeah. There you go.
Yay! I can see you now.
Okay, cool. But yeah, it was such a great idea to keep that a secret, and like I assume the scene gives you an idea of what it's gonna be. Again, it also kind of shows like you're kind of watching the season and you're like, oh man, maybe Boba Fett's gone soft, maybe he's a bit more of a softie, kind of doing the right thing. And this you're like, oh no, he's still a brutal badass who does
he just murders people on his way in and then literally takes over.
The one thing I wished we saw in this last episode was like I wish Boba Fett didn't leave and he was on the ship with them. And then when Luke shows up, he's like, hi, I'm here for... And kind of looks like, what the fuck? He's like, what up, bitch?
He recognizes him? Oh, no.
Yeah, I ain't dead. You can't kill me. Like, that would have been a funny moment. But, like, it's going to be... I mean, I assume Ming-Na Wen's going to return for that because she's kind of become a very big part of Boba Fett, at least in this season of this show. It'll be... I don't even know what it could possibly be about. I don't know, like, what the conflict could be. I don't know, like, who the villains or the heroes might be. I don't know if they're going to try to...
with something. I'm going to make a weird prediction. Do you remember the green guys from Clone Wars? They had, like... They were the crime family until they were all murdered.
Oh, the Yuuzhan Vong from the books.
No, it's...
What? That's not what you're talking about?
No, the Yuuzhan Vong are, like, really delving into the really shitty side of Star Wars. They are
the shitty side.
Those are aliens that fly in ships that are actually alive and that have the power to like still shoot people. No, it's like the Sun family or something. Like,
oh no, yeah, Black Sun.
Black
That's
Sun.
What I'm thinking of.
I think they might do something with that.
That'd be cool. That'd be interesting to see what they do. I was gonna say like it could be Crimson Dawn, but then I realized that Maul is dead by this point, unless they bring him back again, which I wouldn't put past them.
They might.
Again, any character who dies in this series just doesn't die.
Aiden, begin listing off what is coming up.
Yeah, so Disney had Investor Day not too long ago, and they announced like I think it was like 69 things was what they announced total. Nice. And they like more than 20, like around 15% of those things were all Star Wars related stuff. And we're going to go down the list and talk about them and what we think of them. And the first one they talked about was that Rosario Dawson would be coming back as Ahsoka for her very own show, which is pretty big. Again, kind of showing how far this character has come since that shitty movie that no one liked.
I think there's a lot of potential here. I don't know. Like, there's literally no telling what they're... Oh, well, no, she's going to be looking for...
She's going to be looking for Thrawn.
She's going to be looking for Thrawn.
It's going to be a sequel to Rebels, essentially, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, she's going to be looking for Space Aladdin, who will now be a full-grown Space Aladdin.
Yeah.
And
Sabine will probably show up.
The question is who's going to play Thrawn, because the guy who plays him in the show is actually an actor.
Yeah, he could do it. I've heard a lot of people saying they want Benedict Cumberbatch to play Thrawn, and I think he has the perfect physicality for that character.
Speaking of perfect physicality, one of the only reasons why Rosario Dawson got Ahsoka to begin with was because someone showed Dave Filoni the photoshopped image of her as Ahsoka. Mm-hmm. And this is before they had even done The Mandalorian, before they were even getting started. She gets a call from her agent from Dave Filoni saying, do you want to be Ahsoka in one of our shows that we're putting on? And she immediately says yes.
Yes. Yes, please.
I think there's a lot that they can do with here. I don't have any idea what they're going to do with it, but I think there's a lot of...
It'll be, I mean, like I think it seems that they're setting up that the main conflict, at least of whatever this first season is going to be her looking for Thrawn. So that's going to be a big thing. I'm wondering, like, I don't think Gideon is like the leader of the Empire right now. I think if anyone is the leader, it probably would be Thrawn. Well, actually, it might not be because, like...
I'm thinking he's more, like, working from the shadows because...
It could be because
when he... far gone.
When we see... Because they make it clear that the woman in the Ahsoka episode of Mandalorian Season 2 was that she was working for Thrawn, but, you know, clearly those guys aren't Imperials. They're not Stormtroopers, so maybe he's not an Imperial
Maybe we're
anymore.
going to finally introduce a bad guy who is not working for the Emperor to some degree, because we still haven't had that yet.
But that would be very interesting. Like I said, I really liked Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. I liked how it was, you could still tell it was the same character, but she's much older, she's much wiser, she's got a bit more, she's been through some shit, you can tell.
You can tell that there's some PTSD.
Yeah, so that'll be very interesting to see.
What is the next show on the list?
The next show they announced was... what they described as a direct spin-off of Mandalorian. It called Rangers of the New Republic. So they didn't share a lot of details about it, other than, you know, it's probably going to be about the New Republic in the time of the clone of the Mandalorian, which is right after Return of the Jedi. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because if it's a direct spin-off, you would imagine that includes similar characters in Mandalorian, and the obvious answer would be Cara Dune, because she became a marshal at the end of the show. But the reason why I say but is because that actress Gina Carano has had some issues with the Twitter mob around certain things. I don't know the specifics, but
me neither. And quite
usually
frankly,
when that happens, Disney kind of cuts you off. But they've also, I think,
brought
learned
you back with like Guardians. And
stuff. They've also learned from situations like Guardians where they fired the guy immediately, and we're like, okay, maybe we shouldn't have done that.
The only two things I can think of is like Rangers of the New Republic. There was a show very similar to this idea a couple years ago.
Yeah,
it's called Star Wars Resistance or something, and it's about
not the animated.
It is the. That's what I'm referring to. I'm just saying
like the one that takes place like right before Force Awakens.
Right before Force. Okay. I'm saying that we're following the New Republic. Is that what this is called? Rangers of the New Republic.
Rangers of the New Republic.
We're following the New Republic kind of characters in that they're like either like cadets or people who have been there a while, like Poe, and they're in their X-wing. It's basically they're trying to make Top Gun a show for kids.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't work because there was nothing remotely interesting about either the time frame or the characters.
The animation just seemed to get progressively worse. And the animation
wasn't very good. So they may be trying to resurrect some ideas for that, which I'm fine with. I think that could be good.
But I don't even know anyone who's even seen Resistance.
No, I don't think anybody actually took the time to watch it, let alone make it.
Maybe if I watch it, I'll be pleasantly surprised, but who knows?
I have at least that first episode, and it's
usually
a good show.
all those Star Wars animated shows take a while to really get going.
Yeah.
who knows?
But the only thing I can think of after that for the Rangers is that the Cara Dune may be one of these characters because she's a newly.
I could see Bill Burr coming back.
I can see Bill Burr. I could even. I was thinking of Rangers. It's gonna be like
Rescue Rangers.
No, it's gonna be like fighter pilots. So I'm like, is Dave Filoni getting his own show, which I would be down with.
I'd be okay with that.
The Trapper Wolf, the other guy from what is he from? He's from another big show.
I'm not sure.
The Trapper Wolf Power Hour, essentially. I want that.
Yeah.
What's the next one, Aiden?
Oh, the next one is the one that everyone's been asking for years, that we're finally getting, which is the Obi-Wan show, which has been in development, kind of development forever. It's been rumored forever, and now they're finally saying it's happening.
It has not only been through development limbo, it's been through development hell.
Yeah, they've
because
gone
it's not
through,
like they're sitting. No, they stopped.
They've gone through rewrite constantly trying to figure it out. But so they said it's still happening. But the big piece of information they revealed about it is that Hayden Christensen is returning as Darth Vader. But I mean, if he's going to be in the suit the whole time, then it's not going to be Hayden Christensen. I assume they're bringing him back predominantly for flashback stuff.
Okay, to be fair, I did not know this. The Darth Vader at the very end of Episode 3, the one in the suit, that's Hayden Christensen.
Well, yeah, but he's not talking. So it could be him in the suit or whoever in the suit, but it doesn't matter if he's not talking. If it sounds like James Earl Jones, then whatever.
Not much is known about this show besides the fact that Ewan McGregor is totally on board. He's wanted to come back as Obi-Wan for God knows how long. And that they just got Hayden Christensen to sign on to do it, which I think this is a bold move for Hayden Christensen because he has been so mercilessly bullied in the past that I didn't think he even wanted to come back. But I'm glad that what's been happening is they're like, we're finding these good pieces of the Star Wars medium, and even if they had a troubled history, they're putting them back in because they need consistency. I don't know if this was a rumor or if it was a reportedly thing. I also heard that Tamara Morrison might be returning for the show. I think I heard that too. But I could see it as a clone. That would be interesting. But also, if it's Boba Fett, it would be still really interesting because he has a history with Obi-Wan, because he probably would blame him for the death of Jango, even though he didn't strike the killing blow. He was the one that kind of set those chain of events in motion. There was an idea in Rebels. There was an idea Rex to find Imperial Cody and for them to have a fight. I know you talked about that before. I've wanted that for so long. Because we don't know what happened to Cody after Revenge of the Sith. My assumption is that Tamora Morrison is going to show up as Cody. Yeah. And that he's going to have one final meetup there. I'm actually going to come out and say that I don't think Darth Vader is going to be a massive point of the series. I think they say they're going to have a rematch though. Well, they said it's good. The words they used was the rematch of the century. I don't think it's going to be a rematch between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan. I think it's going to be Darth Maul. I think Darth Maul is going to come back because I think they should. Because as far as the timeline goes, the last time we see Darth Maul is in Rebels, where he eventually gets killed by Obi-Wan because he comes back. But I think you could still make the argument because before Rebels, the last time we see him is he's head of Crimson Dawn in Solo. So he's the head of this big criminal organization. Oh, so we're gonna have. So I think Crimson Dawn's gonna be the main villain, and he's gonna fight Darth Maul, and it's gonna be this big thing where it's this thing from his past, but he's gotta let him live. And then there's an in between of because we see him, and he's at the top of his game. He has risen to the. He somehow. How many times has he escaped prison? Is so many times. Crazy. He's at the top of his game. He's leading this crime syndicate, and then the next time we see him, he's like a wandering beggar. Yeah. Not Obi-Wan, the Darth Maul character. Darth Maul, yeah. He's like an old, senile old man. And so that may be it. The next show, which we know about, is the Lando show. Yeah, which we actually don't know much about. We know it's a Lando show, and that's about it. I'm hoping they bring back both Billy D. Williams and the Donald Glover. You want them both to come back? I want them both, just so that the beginning of the first episode can be Billy D. Williams going through some memorabilia, and then it cuts back to all the stuff that he's done in the past. That would actually work. I mean, I would honestly be down for either if it was
older. I mean, like, on one hand, like, Donald Glover was great as that character. It'd be cool to see more of a dynamic with him and L3 and all that stuff, kind of their adventures together. But at the same time, if it was Billy D. Williams, that could also work, because you kind of get that tease at the end of Rise of Skywalker that the one girl is his daughter. And it also would kind of flesh out that era a little bit more, which I think is something that Star Wars really needs, is to flesh out the sequel era like they did flesh out the Clone Wars era, the prequels.
I think we could do a Cloud City show. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I would like to see, what Lando is, or even like a show that maybe is neither, and they pick an actor who looks like Billy D. Williams when he was younger, kind of showing what he was doing in between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, because those entire movies of Force Awakens and Last Jedi, you're just asking yourself, where the hell is Lando? Why is he not here?
Have they said that they're going to bring back the Han Solo actor too? Or I heard that.
They have not said that as far as I know, but
I
do know that Alden Ehrenreich is who you're talking about. I think he has expressed interest in coming back should they ask him to, but I don't think they have any current plans as far as I know.
I'd be fine with that. I think he was fine.
I think he did a good job as Han Solo.
And the
next one is the most interesting one, and also this is the vaguest one, probably. It's called The Acolyte, and it is the first live-action thing to be set during the High Republic era, which is this kind of in-between era between the Old Republic, which is still vaguely canon, and the prequels. They said it takes place 200 years before the events of Phantom Menace.
We have almost no information about the show besides, the time period, and right now what Disney is doing is they're releasing a bunch of merchandise that has to do with this era. But very little of it actually fleshes out what's going on. Almost all of it is...
Because I think they're saving the big stuff for a show or a movie.
The stuff we're getting right now about the High Republic is that there are Jedi kids being trained, and that's it. There's nothing else. There's no bad guy. There's no big universe event. It's just kids are being taught how to be Jedi, and that's it. Yeah. I have the funniest thing that I know about the High Republic, and I know I've told Aiden about this before, was I bought if anybody owns the Oculus Quest, they have that new Galaxy's Edge game, which it's fine. I thought I was going to get a Disneyland-ish experience with it. It just turned out to just be a normal Oculus VR game. But midway through, they tease that they're gonna show you this lightsaber. You're a Jedi in the High Republic, and you're gonna learn under Yoda. Kind of like how in the Vader Immortal VR game, you actually learn how to use the Force from Darth Vader. Yeah. Unfortunately, this segment turns into Yoda scolding you for being a bad person. And him telling you you're never going to be a Jedi. And him being just generally really mean to you. And I don't know what to make of it. There's no way to lose this game, but you're just going to be scolded by Yoda for not being a good person.
It's Dominatrix Yoda. But yeah, I mentioned, the name Acolyte assumes that we're seeing the perspective from a Sith character, at the very least, or at least they're being, because Acolyte is more of a Sith thing, right? That doesn't really sound like Jedi. And
it's the Sith, at this point in time, are
Darth Bane's around at this point,
They're around, but they haven't been seen. No Jedi or, new civilized planet knows of their existence. They thought they were all dead. Mm-hmm. This is the 1,000 years that the Sith are believed to just are gone. Yeah. So this is going to be kind of how the underworld works, I'm guessing. Yeah. What's the next one?
Oh, well, the next one is one they announced a while ago, but now it's getting closer and closer to release, which is the Rogue One spinoff, Andor, following the Cassian Andor character.
A prequel to Rogue One, because unfortunately we all know what happens at the end of Rogue
One. He doesn't make it.
But it will be him. It'll be the droid that everybody loves.
Yeah, K2SO has to show up, right? Yeah. I mean, it has to be about how they met at some that's got to be a main part of it.
Very little information about the show. The one thing that we've actually had experience with is at Disneyland they used to have a VR arcade that they called the Void, and it was basically the Cassian Andor VR.
Yeah, he does show up in
because that. you get on, you put on the headset, and suddenly you're in complete stormtrooper armor, and you're taking orders from you're a rebel spy, and you're taking orders from Cassian Andor, And then about halfway through, K2SO shows up, and he tells you what to do too. So not very much, but it's still that he's interested in working for Star Wars, and they're interested in preserving these characters, even if the movie wasn't as well liked. As
and like his character, like when you're introduced to him, he's interesting because he's a rebel, but he's also like kind of a bad person.
Yeah,
like
he kind of great.
Yeah, he kind of like kills innocent people because he thinks like that's what the job needs to do. He's kind of like this fixer almost, where he like does all the rebellion's like dirty work that you don't like want other people to see.
6 years old.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Like I think that's a good like if they expand on that concept a little bit more about like this guy who's a rebel who's also just a bad person for the most part.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to make him, like, evil. You can just make him, like, he's not that great of a guy.
Well, he's going to be an anti-hero. Well, no, I can't say that, because Disney will find a way to, like, just forget about it. They'll make him, like, this... They'll make him the hero.
I am honestly shocked that they have not given Donnie Yen his own show, because I thought Chirrut was one of the coolest characters in that movie.
They would have... They'd have
like I would love to see like the adventures of Chirrut and Baze, because like
those are two cool characters that just had
they introduced like a new part of the Star Wars that we've never seen before, where like they're devout like Force worshippers, but they're not really Jedi.
Yeah,
like
I don't think he ever uses the Force in the movie.
Yeah, other than he's just like blind and like maybe lucky.
Yeah,
that seems to be it. But like,
I think that's a fun character.
So cool character, and like Donnie Yen's just such. Not only is he like great with all of like the combat and martial arts stuff, he's just a really good actor in general, and like you could just tell like he really enjoyed playing that role, and I would just love to see more of that. But yeah, so those are a couple of the shows. They also did announce a couple movies there. The first one was a movie that's being directed by Patty Jenkins, making her the first female director to direct a feature film in the Star Wars universe.
She has previously... Did she do both Wonder Woman?
She did both Wonder Womans, yeah. Really good.
Had nothing to do with the Justice League, though.
Nothing to do with Justice League.
Which she will gladly say to anybody who asks her about it.
Yeah, anyone who is a director will say they weren't part of Justice League. But yeah, she did both of those. I believe she also did Monster, starring Charlize Theron, which is a really good movie. I could be wrong about that, but I think that was her. Really good director, and she's directing a Rogue Squadron movie, which is confirmed to not be a direct adaptation of the games, but is still going to follow the titular Rogue Squadron, who of course is Luke's kind of squadron that he joins.
And it's a squadron that was named after the first ship in the Rogue One movie. So,
yeah.
So clear, like if you ask where's the sequel to Rogue One, it's fucking the first Star Wars movie. Like they're not gonna make a sequel to it because all those characters are dead and they finished what they started. And this is not a sequel to Rogue One. This is just other ships in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, I think this has the potential to be great, especially if they do deliver on that concept that we kind of mentioned earlier that Resistance kind of failed to do, which is
Top Gun.
Top Gun with Star Wars, which sounds like it would be great and awesome and super cool. But yeah, again, not really much information other than it's going to be a starfighter show that's set in the Star Wars universe, so that'll be really cool to see.
I'm sorry that half of this is just we don't have the information yet.
We're speculating. You want even less information because they mentioned Taika Waititi's movie and they didn't even give a title or any information. They just said it's unique, which checks out because it's Taika Waititi.
I'm trying to remember. Is there anything else that they've even remotely talked? I had a list.
They did mention a couple of, like the other one is that they're kind of sort of maybe reviving the Droids cartoon.
That's right. I heard that they were going to, along with like they're going to make a Buzz Lightyear movie at some, but that's besides the point. They're going to be making the Droids cartoon again. Which is
it's got to be like a one-off special feature thing. One of the most interesting projects that I wasn't sure about to begin with, but now that they released a trailer for it, I'm much more interested. It was the Bad Batch show, which is a spin-off.
Yeah. Well,
really a sequel. It's really Clone Wars Season 8.
It's the next season of Clone Wars, and it's following it's kind of a generic team up of like special forces. You have the Rambo character.
Well, what makes them interesting is that like they're clones, but they call them the Bad Batch because they're like mutated clones that were
called deficient, but it turns out that they're
I think they call them
weirdness.
They call them Squadron 99 because it's a tribute to the janitor clone from the Clone Wars.
You guys have to actually watch the Clone Wars. These are really good episodes that we're referencing right
now. Those episodes are
good. This crew, like I said, it's kind of a generic action hero squad. You have the heavy. You have the Rambo one. You have the sniper one.
The techie one.
Is the smart one a different one than the sniper one?
Yeah.
And then the last one is the one that they just introduced. He's half clone, half robot, because in the show he was abducted by the droids.
Is it Echo or 5? It's
Echo,
Echo, isn't it? Right? Yeah.
And I think the point of the show is that we're gonna see Order 66 is gonna happen, so all the Jedi are gonna be dead.
Well, that's what interests me about it, is that when you see the show, you first see the Bad Batch stuff, and then you see Palpatine going like, it's the Galactic Empire and stuff like that. So you're like, oh, so we're going to see what clones are doing after Order 66, and that sounds fascinating.
We also don't have, because these guys are deficient to some, like they're not regular clones to some degree.
Yeah.
We don't know if they will actually go out and try
I
to
assume
kill
what
Jedi
the show is going to be, it's going to be an explanation of why they stopped using clones.
Yeah.
Because there was an explanation in the EU of why that didn't happen, but it's also an explanation that doesn't really make any sense, because...
What was the explanation?
The explanation before is that the Kaminoans found out that they were breeding the stormtroopers for this evil empire who were programmed to kill the Jedi. They're like, wait a minute, that's bad, we can't do that. Yeah. And then they killed them. I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't know this? You were making the damn things.
So that, I remember that explanation. There are a couple other ones too. The other explanation is that the Jango Fett Mandalorian DNA is being stretched so much that more and more problems are happening, that they're like, okay, we're either gonna have to clone other people or just stop cloning altogether.
Yeah,
that's another one. Which
is why the Bad Batch are the way they are.
There's another explanation, which is, oh god, I'm trying to remember. I remember. There is a specific set of comic books where these guys are being attacked by the bad guy Inquisitors, who work for Darth Vader, who carry lightsabers, and they hunt down Jedi.
Yeah.
And they're all surrounded, and the stormtroopers have them, or the clone troopers have them, and the Inquisitors are about to kill them. And then like the smuggler guy says, "Execute Order 66!" And all the clones turn and start shooting the Inquisitors. And he said, "I didn't know it would work." And the other guy's like, "I didn't know it would work. I thought it would only work on Jedi."
That's kind of funny.
It was that the people found out that the weakness of the Empire when they'd bring in the Force wielders was that the clones still had it in their brain that they could turn at any time.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, this will not be the reason why, and the show will most likely prove it, but these are just the few, like, little fun...
If it is the reason why, they're going to show that, at least. Because before, that's something we've just heard of, but we've never actually seen it before. And they also show, once again, showing that Mandalorian is now a big part, is that Ming-Na Wen's character is returning.
Yep. Oh, yeah, she will be, like, at least 20 years younger.
Yeah.
In the Bad Batch.
Which will work, because she sounds the same. She sounds exactly like she sounded in Mulan.
All those years ago. Honestly, I think the future of Star Wars has never been brighter.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if people aren't...
Well, it's interesting, like, when they announced, like, 2 spin-off movies, people were like, they're milking Star Wars, which is a hilarious thing to hear. Because you're like... Okay, to say they're only just now milking it means that everything that came before this has been a vital, essential part of the Star Wars canon. Therefore, you are saying that the Christmas special is necessary to Star Wars.
To tell the story of Star Wars.
It's like Star Wars has always been getting milked. It always will be milked. Like, that's not even in the conversation. So to say it's only being milked now is ridiculous. But, like...
As long as Disney...
But now they announced 10 shows and people are all excited about it. And then the last show that we got here... is another one that sounds really interesting. What's called Star Wars Visions, and it's essentially an anthology show that is being created by Japanese creators. So it's essentially going to be Star Wars anime. And the first thing that popped into my head is that incredible YouTube short.
The TIE Fighter?
The TIE Fighter thing, yeah. There's this I'll put a link into it in the description because it's just so good. But it's this anime short that was made completely independently, and it's this incredibly remarkably detailed animated short film
based
about, like,
on
and if it's that quality and it's like 10 episodes of different things like that, like, that could be super cool.
Oh my gosh, I'm thinking of right now, when we were kind of starved for good Star Wars, like not before Mandalorian, just in the past few years when you're just waiting between movies.
Even like before Disney bought it, it was just like all Clone Wars stuff all the time, and it was getting like annoying. And then Disney brought it back, and now we're sick of that. So now we want to go back to other stuff.
In recent years, I'm just saying that I think one of the best incarnations one of the best new additions to Star Wars that has been done recently, and this is really obscure, but Walmart started, like, they have their own toy line called Galaxy of Heroes or Galaxy of Adventures.
Oh yeah, those little shorts they do.
There's a Star Wars YouTube channel just called Star Wars Kids, and they have some of the best Star Wars like animations that recap all of the events of previous movies. Yeah. But it's a kids show, but they don't pull any punches. If Kylo Ren murdered an entire community of people, Walmart paid for them to animate it. And I find that so funny that they did. But they're still top quality too. So as much as I recommend the TIE Fighter, I also recommend just seeing all of these because it recaps and also Fire Lord Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender narrates everything. Why? I don't know. But he's there, and I think it's really good.
Yeah, those are all really good. I think the most exciting thing about most of these shows, and not just the Star Wars stuff, but a lot of like they showed like footage from like Loki and WandaVision's coming out, and like all these like shows and stuff. They seem to be a lot more willing than the theatrical released movies to take a lot of risks.
Yeah.
And like they're doing like stuff that's a lot more creative and weird and wacky, and like say what you want about the most recent Star Wars films. Like I said, I like them for the most part, but I think one of the biggest issues with like the main trilogy that came out specifically is that they play it really safe.
Yeah. There's not a lot of risk taking.
Not a lot of risk. It's kind of just like, we're making a Star Wars movie, and like, do they do that well? For the most part, sure, but I think a lot of things that make Star Wars is that kind of weird, unexpected aspect of it, and it seems like these shows are kind of trying to encapsulate that.
I think the future of Star Wars looks bright. I know that we have a lot of stuff to look forward to between the games, the movies, and the shows.
Yeah.
And as much as I'm kind of peeved at Disney right now for reasons unrelated to Star Wars, I hope that they're making a good decision in doing all, because it took all their resources to make The Mandalorian. I don't want them to spread themselves too thin across all of these different things.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping they put the same amount of time and effort into all of these productions as they do into the one. And that's what I am looking forward to in the upcoming years of both Star Wars, Disney, and entertainment as a whole.
Yeah. Well, that's a good note to end it on, I think. I think all these shows look really interesting. They've shown thus far that these shows are a pretty big success with Mandalorian, and it makes sense that they're trying to capitalize on that with making more of them. And all of them at least sound very interesting. Like none of the new shows coming up sound like they're going to be trash. Like I don't think
any of them in the past have sounded like, oh, this is a bad idea. I don't think Disney comes up with bad I think they come up with good ideas and then just bad execution.
Well, I will admit, when I heard like the anime Star Wars thing, I was like, okay, they used that exact same description
for the previous one, yeah.
But then they're like, don't worry, it's actually being made by Japanese creators, and you're like, okay, good.
Thank God.
Well, all right, that'll do it. Maybe we'll do another one of these when WandaVision finishes, and then we'll talk about other Marvel stuff, maybe, or we'll just do something else completely unrelated. I don't know.
Hells yeah! Thanks for having me on the first episode of your show.
This is a very unrelated thing, or I don't know why I said unrelated. A very spur of the moment thing, and it turned out well. So yeah, I don't have an outro or anything. I don't really know how to finish this.
Goodbye, everybody. Night, everybody.